When people say Square don't make old school RPGs anymore, I can't understand it. We might have been lucky to get 2 Bravely Defaults, but they've been investing in other projects for years like Setsuna and Lost Sphere. The best thing about Octopath is how nearly every story begins with a bang.
Earhart, what is the meaning of this?
Loss of a family member, a missing friend, a tragic flashback, an unthinkable betrayal. The intros have a flair for the dramatic, and they help set the stage for all 8 journeys to come. Even a relatively innocent scholar's story who begins teaching students geography turns into a Freedom of Information Act of treason epic. One of the apothecary's first steps is visiting a graveyard of sick people he couldn't heal. It can get grim, but then you'll witness whirling Looney Tune-esque stars above a cute enemy fraud's head in the next beat. Such is the life of a JRPG. Octopath uses gimmicks to its advantage to help sell the story of each character. So the Huntress can challenge people to duels, the Scholar can glean information from suspects, and the Cleric can inspire people to follow her. It's all basic stuff, enacted with a simple press of the Y button, but it's not so gimmicked up that it belies the flow. I played every character for roughly an hour each before deciding who I wanted to dive in with first. That's an awesome problem to have. To get this out of the way, Octopath Traveler is an old school JRPG through and through. You can't save anywhere, there is fast travel, and there's a very linear leveling system that sometimes involves grinding random battles. While each story is unique from a narrative sense, they all start the same. A small gated zone to level up in with a limited supply of items followed up by a dungeon and a boss. Because of the way the stories are framed, the first few hours or so are slow going with just one character squaring off against a group of enemies. Depending on who you start with, it can either be a slog, like the Cleric for example, or a breeze with the Warrior. It can get pretty brutal for some characters. In one cave as the Scholar, I walked into a 1v2 against elemental enemies, who surprise attacked me 2 times each and brought me to 25% health in one go. I narrowly escaped that fight and healed up with an item, as he had no restorative spells available. If you die, it's game over, back to the last save point. Old school roughness at its finest.
I am sorry.
That's not to say it's unmanageable for people who are remotely familiar with JRPG principles. You can buy healing items at the start with a small cash injection with all 8 characters, and made strategic use of break and boost systems to whittle down enemies and prevent them from counterattacking. There are tools to curb viewings of the game over screen, you just have to use them. Enemies all have weaknesses, which can be exploited by the break system to stun them for 1 turn. Initially, it's kind of a cat and mouse game figuring this out with new foes, but eventually you'll pick them up and beat them down for extra continuous damage. Boosting, which powers up abilities up to 3 turns with 1 charge per turn, is a little more involved. I enjoyed the extra layer of debuffing enemies at a lower boost level, then striking their weakness with a boosted elemental spell and instantly breaking them. The development team also goes out of its way to make abilities more impactful. Instead of just cleansing debuffs, 1 power removes them and prevents further debuffs for 2 turns. When you add multiple party members and enemy types into the mix, it gets more complex. But most of these mechanics have been done before, so don't go in expecting groundbreaking gameplay. In that sense, Octopath Traveler is a little at odds with itself. It's fun to play, the characters are mostly compelling, and it looks incredible, yet there's a harrowing feeling of emptiness at points, especially during some of the game's blander dungeon crawls. For the vast majority of the adventure, I cared about my party's motivations and the world around them, but every so often I get that sinking feeling that I'd been here before, both pragmatically and spiritually. Brand new JRPG players who get over a few of the more archaic notions might find it more refreshing, but there's one thing I never got tired of: the aesthetics. I want to see more games use this 2.5D HD style, and please don't make me wait a decade and change this time. It's easy to compare it to something like Final Fantasy Tactics, but the more you play Octopath, the more you'll see that it's really its own thing. Winding vertical dungeon layers hide secrets without making navigation too frustrating. Small towns have their own charm about them, and character models, especially bosses, are emotive. Octopath Traveler is a small triumph in that it managed to mostly deliver its promise to give us 8 stories worth seeing through. None of them push the envelope in any way, and several drag, but that's not a huge issue when you have so many to choose from. Even if you skip one or several tales altogether, you're still going to get a handful of RPG goodness. But for more written reviews and original features, be sure to head on over to Destructoid.com.